I'm lost.
Zach.
Ryan.
No. Try again.
Jessica?
That's you.
Oh.
Or that's one of your personalities.
Oh, yeah. We got rid of her.
Yeah. She's gone.
Matt?
It's Mark, but close enough. Ryan's not joining us again. That's fine.
He's getting dangerously close to getting fired.
Yeah, this is definitely going to come up in his performance review.
Definitely.
But
as the newest member,
there are mitigating circumstances that might, ease his sentence. He might just have to read an embarrassing poem or a text or something that he sent at some point.
That is true.
We can go through his texts and see if he sent anything embarrassing.
I was going to say, I know that I've only been here for a few weeks, but I feel like the commitment needs to be made.
It does.
It does.
So that's Zach. I'm Matt. Welcome to Pop Culture Unboxing. It's a show we do, podcast, pop culture variety. And by pop culture, of course, we mean just movies and TV, because we just ignore all the other aspects of pop culture.
Oh yeah, and by movies and TV, we mean Star Wars and Avengers.
Basically, yeah. Before we do get into it, Zach, I'm sorry to let you know, we did have a death in the family recently. My family, not like our collective family.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to hear that.
It was my sister's adopted hamster, Tito, passed away yesterday.
I'm sure that must have been hard after trying to conceive for so long.
Yeah, I'm sure it was for her. And the hamster, she just got dropped in her lap by a roommate that ended up at our house somehow. And his absence has been largely unnoticed, because it turns out that unless you happen to be there for the 10 minutes that he's not sleeping, you don't see him.
It's such a shame to leave such a little mark on the world.
Exactly. But I mean, I guess that's as prey animals like they are, it's probably their goal is to leave as little a mark as possible. Yeah. You know how it is for little tiny rodents like that.
Oh,
he was cool.
Yeah. I mean,
he tolerated being held.
I've been a baby rat for years.
Yeah.
Yeah. I wasn't properly taught how to play. That's why I'm not as fun as I could be.
I'll teach you how to play.
By the way, that is when your girlfriend's having a bad day and you're joking with her.
Yeah.
The wrong response is to go, "Oh, was somebody not played with as a baby rat?" Because my girlfriend knows the reference.
I have to ask. Do you know from personal experience?
From playing with baby rats?
No. Or from saying that to your girlfriend when she's had a bad day?
Oh, 100%.
Okay.
So my girlfriend and I, we were listening to The Psychologist, and one of the things that he's talking about is like how important not being a tyrant is, and rats are a great example of that.
Okay.
Because the bigger rat, because rats will play, and they actually will work very, very hard to play. But the bigger rat could always beat the smaller rat.
Yeah.
But in order to play over time, the bigger rat has to let the smaller rat win about a third of the time.
Yeah, I've heard that before, actually.
So it's one of those things where it's like, if you're tyrannical, neither rat will play with each other anymore. And that's kind of the same thing with like people. But my girlfriend was having a bad day, and I was joking with her.
The giant rat makes all the rules.
Yeah.
We're the rats. We're the rats.
But that was kind of the thing where like, I was trying to play with her, and I was trying to get her to smile. And like, we had just finished listening to this bit, and I thought that she would laugh at it, because like there's certain things I'll say that like obviously aren't affectionate, but she finds the humor in it, and she just wasn't having a good day. So I looked at her and I was like, "Oh, did someone not play with you when you were a baby rat?" And you would have. Oh man, was it not the right joke to make? She laughs about it now, but she looked at me and she went, "Why would you call me a baby rat? That is not the thing you call your girlfriend." And I was like, "I'm so sorry." I was like, "I thought you knew the reference. I thought you would joke about it." Like, oh, it was so funny.
God.
And it was like afterwards, she's just like, "I can't believe you called me a baby rat." She's like, "I can't believe it." And it was one of those things. It was like a week later. She's like, "Oh, am I not a baby rat? Am I a baby rat now?" So now it's become this like joke like back on me.
Of course, that's how it always happens, isn't it?
Oh yeah. Well, there's these funny things that we do. Like we do a lot of things ironically, and it kind of becomes a thing that we do.
Yeah.
So like,
oh yeah,
we had made a joke about, I really enjoy old fashions, and my girlfriend makes a phenomenal old fashioned.
Okay.
And she made the joke one day about, she's like, "Oh, there used to be housewives where like people would like clink their glass and they would come in and change it out." So I was doing coding, and I was working, and I was in a group, and I was in a Zoom meeting talking with people trying to get things fixed. And I was like, hey guys, watch this. And I picked up my glass and I still had a tiny little ice cube at the bottom of it. And I just shook it around. It's like, ding, 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 ding. And I waited for a second and she didn't respond. And I was like, let me try one more time. Put it back up. Ting, 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 ting. And she opens the door real slow and then just shoots her head in and looks at me and goes, you didn't. And I was like, I just looked at her and like, ting, 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 ting. And she goes, you're lucky I love you. And grabbed it and made me another old fashioned. And it's become like an ironic thing that we do where it's like, she knows that I did it as a joke. Yeah. And now it's oddly become a thing that we do now. And like, she does the same thing with me now where like, she'll make like, cause like, she's like, honeydew lists are garbage, but she made me a honeydew list, like ironically one day. Yeah. And now she leaves me a list to do. So like, it's one of those things where like, I'll get up in the morning and she'll be like, I'll go over and it'll be like, Zach, it's like, I'll have you whole bunches. Like, do this, 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 and this. And I'm like, oh man, now I got to do the honeydew list. I'm like, this is what I get for the glass clinking.
Yeah.
Like, but those are all the things that like we do little things like that. Ironically, it is priceless.
I think that's pretty much everyone. They're all it's always fun.
Yeah.
The one I did with, there's actually two of them. One was with my brother. Mm-hmm. I have successfully used Pavlov conditioning to, if I snap my fingers, he gets instantly angry.
That's great.
Because there were for the longest time, I would, if I needed to get his attention, I would like snap my fingers and be like, hey, come here. I'd be like, come here.
And just keep going.
And he started getting really angry about it to the point where if I did it once, he looks at me furious.
That's so great.
It's so good.
That's funny. I have one story like that.
Okay.
My buddy was getting married and I was the best man. So I get to sit next to him.
You are the best man, Zach.
Oh my God, my heart.
To someone else.
Oh. Well, this is true, because it was.
But the joke doesn't really land when it's still objectively true.
It's like, oh, wait, I said a true statement.
I felt like you were waiting for me to to give you the compliment and then stick the knife in.
I was waiting for it.
But it was like one of those dummy knives where it just
like retracts itself.
Yeah.
And like you look down, you're like, oh, I'm not dead.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was like, because I was there, it was like 3 days before the wedding, we were all talking and whatnot. And like, I would just randomly sit up next to him and I would put my hand on his shoulder and goes, it's going to be all right. He's like, so we got like to like the end of day 2. We went paintballing and we're on our way back and like, we're driving in the car and he's sitting next to me. And I did it again while we were driving. And I was like, it's going to be all right. And he just looks at me and goes, why are you doing that? And I was like, and I just did it again. I was like, it's going to be all right. So we get up there and it's a beautiful wedding. And they open up the door and he can see his wife.
Yeah.
And he starts to cry, as he should. It was a wonderful moment. And I just put my hand up and touched him and didn't say anything. And he just goes, like it was just one of those soft laughs where it was like, dang it, you did it. Like, and that's the kind of relationship we have where we do stuff that with each other.
Oh my God.
But I'll be honest with you, I honestly think that is my crowning achievement of like doing little things like purposefully. Because like I don't do it. I usually don't do anything purposely. I used to do it with waving in the office. When I was in the office, I used to wave at people until they wave back. So then they learned that if I wave at them, I'm not going to stop until they wave back. So now when I see people in the office and I start to bring my hand up, they wave back at me and then it's done. So like everyone in the office used to wave at me. But that's like a little fun things. Like I don't use my powers for evil.
You know, if you do something like that, you can really ruin people's day by not waving. Like if getting them to the point where they wave at you first. And then look them in the eyes and don't wave back. It'll ruin their whole day.
It's so funny. I made the mistake of telling my boss that because he had started doing it, and I was like, "Look, I even got you doing it." He goes, "Never doing it again." And then he wouldn't wave at me. And it was no fun anymore.
Yeah, that's why you don't tell them you've conditioned them because once they know they've been conditioned, they'll stop doing it.
Oh yeah.
It doesn't work like it does with animals.
It was so much fun. But it was kind of nice because it was one of those things like when you come into the office, it's like people are happy to see you. They know you're going to wave. And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, I'm trying to make the environment like a better place. Yeah. That's usually what I was doing for.
You've just dredged up a memory for me, which we're a pop culture podcast and we're just sitting here talking about funny things we do in our lives, which whatever, it's fun.
Yeah. This is the opener. Get used to it.
Work. One of my first jobs was I was a food server. I forget the title. The official business title at an old folks home. It wasn't assisted living or anything like that. Like they just apartments for old people.
Yeah.
And they would
retirement homes.
And the places are kind of sad. I mean, these people, all they do is sit in their rooms and sleep and wait for each meal.
Oh, that's
And
sad.
yeah, because a lot of them don't have family nearby or anything like that. But so I tend to be pretty cheerful, and so what I would do is I would every and I didn't even do it on purpose. Every table I would walk up and the first thing I'd say is, "Alrighty then, what's everyone having?" Or something to that effect. I would always start with "Alrighty then,"
Yeah.
and it got to the point where once in a while I wouldn't do it, and they would ask me, "Oh, you didn't say alrighty then?" I'm like,
Yeah. It becomes the routine.
yeah, it does. And I would notice them like kind of deflate a little bit if I didn't say it. And it would usually be like if I was off that day or not off, but like I was just off mentally that day
Yeah.
or something. And I just didn't think of it. And I was just kind of going through the motions. And it's wild. Like those little things that you do that you don't even notice, or you maybe do notice, that affect other people like that. And it's kind of a cool way to see how you affect other people.
Oh yeah, it's huge. And like your personality is perfect for young kids and old people. like and
I
for
hate
those
that's accurate.
I was
yeah.
gonna say, for those of you that like don't know us personally, you gotta understand that is the greatest compliment.
Yeah.
Like it's one of those things where it's like,
Oh, you brought up another memory from that place.
yeah, they expect those things. And that's one of
Yeah.
those things where people start to like enjoy, like, oh, he's the one that's fun. He's the one that's gonna
Yeah.
like hang out with us. And like that's what people expect at those ages.
Kind of funny. It's actually kind of a double story about like just fitting in well there, and also the kind of inefficient bureaucracy of big company, because it was for UPMC owned the place.
Oh, okay.
And
Yeah.
UPMC, if anyone doesn't know, is a healthcare. I forget what it even stands for, but
It's University of Pittsburgh Medical Center.
that's right. They are the biggest employer in PA. They run all of the old folks' homes. They run all of the assisted living facilities. They run all of most of the hospitals.
Yep. Pittsburgh is the number one place for cancer research, I believe, as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're wonderful with medical.
Yeah. And they are, and so what I was doing there was, before I started working there, I think I was too young to start working there. What I was doing was volunteering there. And I was, the big things I was doing was I was helping out. I was calling bingo for them, which it's cutthroat. I don't know if you've ever called bingo or been around bingo with old folks. Oh my
they're in it to
God,
win it.
it's vicious.
They are in it to win it.
Yes. If they were especially vicious if someone new to the place, which it was called Strabane Trails. If someone was new there and they won, they were not popular. Oh, another anecdote on that. It wasn't assigned seating, because it was just a big dining room with and it was a bunch of tables with 4 chairs. Not assigned seating or anything like that, but it was kind of assigned seating.
Yeah.
Like, so
It's
again, if
implied.
someone's new there, they'll just sit wherever. But if they're sitting at the table that these two couples usually sit at, there's hell to pay. It's not
over.
immediately, but they're staring daggers at them.
Yeah,
so
it's
you
implied.
knew where where these people sat.
Oh, yeah.
And my grandparents lived there, and they were very much like, they just went with the flow. So they would often just sit wherever, because you would have the front of the room was where all the people who had the assigned seating would sit. And then the back of the room was where you'd have all the people that just kind of sat wherever was open.
Yeah.
And it's funny. It turns cliquey. Like,
Real
you
quick,
go
yeah.
from high school where it's all cliquey to adults where it's not really, but it kind of is. And then you go to a place like this where it's very much cliquey again.
Yeah, it kind of goes back.
But anyway, I was volunteering, and what I was doing was I would do that. I would call bingo, and I would teach them how to play Wii bowling. They had a Wii and,
That's
and
awesome.
a little rec room. And there would be, a couple of people would come. My grandma would come, obviously, and then a handful of others. And I swear to God, it was every time. Other than one or two or three of them, sharp as tacks, they picked it up pretty quick, and they were just they were going. But there were others that they couldn't latch onto it very easily, which is fair. It's like, for you and I, Wii bowling is stupid simple. You hold the Wii remote, you hold down B, you pull your arm back, and you go forward with it, and you let go of B the same way you'd let go of a bowling ball.
Yeah.
Then it goes down, you get your strike and celebrate. But
Oh, yeah,
for a
it's
lot
simple.
of that, and it's a thing with a lot of older people who didn't grow up with technology. You and I did, but for them, that whole thing of pulling it back and push and throwing it forward again, and also holding down and letting go of the button it's tough. It's tough to coordinate it. And I would do that an hour a day. I think every Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'd be there teaching them how to do it, and there were a lot of them I would teach them every week. And I remember it made me so happy the one time where one of the guys who came to that, he told me, like, you have the patience of a saint. Like, I know that you have to teach me this every time I come here, but you do it and you're patient about it.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, thanks. So now you're thinking, okay, but he said something about bureaucracy. So at these facilities, and I don't know if it's universal, but I know it is at any of these assisted living or independent living is the term. I keep saying old folks home. It's independent living facility.
Very independent with all the help you need.
Oh yeah. Well, and it really is that, they take
I just find the name
you pay
ironic.
them monthly and they take care of everything.
Yeah.
But you have to get up. You make your own schedule. They have shuttles that'll take you wherever you need to go.
Oh, that's
There's
cool.
no nurses there or anything.
Oh, okay.
You're responsible for your own medication and doctor's appointments and stuff like that. But because of that, there's more, you have to make sure that you're not bringing anything in that's bad for them. The big one was tuberculosis.
Yeah.
So you'd have your TB shot or a TB test where they'd inject a little bit of something into your arm and it would create a little bubble. And if it got irritated, it meant you had TB.
Yeah.
Or you were a carrier. And to be employed there, you had to have had a TB test to come back negative to make sure that you're not bringing it in. But not if you're volunteering. So I had been volunteering there for 6 months to a year before I was employed there. And then I had to go take a TB test. I'm like, but I've been volunteering here for almost a year now. So if I had it, I would have already infected pretty much everyone here.
Yeah.
And it's just the weird little bureaucracy.
Hole in the policies.
Yeah.
Yep. Dude, that's always been a big thing with me with like bigger systems. And like I'm sure by now you guys have picked up on how analytical I can be on specific subjects.
Yeah.
We're like, I'll look at stuff. I'm like, it just doesn't make any sense. It's like, you have this policy here to prevent it, but like there's an obvious loophole.
Yeah.
And in that case, 100%. It's like, why wouldn't you have that all together? Like,
Yeah.
like if you have somebody visiting, you're visiting that individual and you're not going to be going around from place to place. But if you're volunteering, you're going to be going from person to person to person.
Yep.
Like, you need that. And when you're older, your immune system isn't as good.
Exactly.
And they're hotbeds. It's like
it's
the same thing like with COVID. Almost like at the beginning, all of the major spikes came out of nursing homes, and like we couldn't keep the nursing homes safe.
Yeah.
And it's so much easier to spread in those kind of environments.
Yeah. But
crazy.
and I understand you have to draw a line somewhere. You can't have
make it over.
You can't have John coming to visit his mother there. You can't tell him he has to get a TB test that he has to wait 3 days to find the results from before he can go visit his mother every time.
Yeah.
But you also, you can't have people in there every day who might be carriers of it and might bring these infections.
Yep.
So the line has to be drawn somewhere, but it's odd to me that it wasn't drawn ahead of volunteering, where you're coming in there, you're interacting with potentially several to dozens of different people who, and all it takes is one.
Yep.
All you got to do is infect one of them, and they live there. They interact with people there. They play board games with them. They play cards with them. They eat dinner with them.
And by the time they actually start showing symptoms and start having problems, they've already been through the whole community. Yep.
And to be fair, yeah, when John goes to visit his mother, yeah, he could bring it in there too. And so I don't know. Yeah, it's the bureaucracy.
It's hard,
Yeah,
and it is hard to make a line.
Yeah,
and draw a
it
line.
is.
You know what? Oddly enough, one of the things I thought was really, really well built. How I Met Your Mother.
I never watched any of it.
You never did?
No.
Oh my god!
You have one up on me this time.
How I Met Your Mother may be the best, well-written story I've ever heard. Ever watched.
You've clearly never
both.
watched Breaking Bad.
Well, let me put it this way. In the beginning season, they realized the kids that that like the dad is talking to and telling these stories, they're going to get older.
Yeah.
They were locked into an ending at the end of season 1.
Oh, I think I've heard this before.
And like, so the ending's kind of rushed, and that was like the only thing of the series I didn't like. But they had a finite endpoint, and now they did have an out. So obviously, How I Met Your Mother's a little older, so I'm not worried about giving some stories.
Is it that old?
It's old enough for everyone else to have known about it before I did.
Okay.
Relatively everyone else. And then I finally went and watched it. I was like, wow, this is great. Everyone was like, yeah, we already saw it. And I was like, okay, well, I'm here now. So like, I was like, indulge me.
Here's your participation trophy.
Yeah. It's like Demi Lovato's equal attention cake. I don't know if you saw that when DMX died.
Oh God, no, she didn't.
Demi Lovato put out a video that was like, when he died, I realized that could have been me. And it was like, it was hilarious. There was a meme that went out that like showed the headline of that, And then it was the Family Guy bit where it's like, it's Stewie's birthday. And they look over at Peter and like, here's your equal attention cake. And it was like,
my
oh God,
yeah,
it's so true.
that's a thing. It is. Oh my God.
Yeah, I know.
We're not
right?
going down this road. I've talked about this before on the show. My issues with this.
Oh yeah. But anyway, so in the first season or the second season, he meets a woman that could be the mom.
Yeah.
And their out is at any point, if they got canceled because they weren't able to bring the real mom in yet, their out would be to go back to her. She comes back and they get married.
Yeah.
And that's how it'll end. But the last, I think it's like 4 seasons. Now I also
How many
watched
seasons were there?
Oh, gee, I'd have to actually look it up, but I'm gonna say there's at least 6.
Okay.
6 or 7. Let me actually look this up because I want to be a little bit more accurate with it. But I think it was at least.
Well, here, I'll look it up. You keep talking.
So it's at least the last 2 seasons. It may have been the last 3 seasons. They started hinting at things that would happen. And because they were locked into an ending, they knew where everyone was going to end up. So all they had to do was send these lines out.
9 seasons.
So they had 9 seasons.
208 episodes.
Okay, so I think it ends up being like the last 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah.
They start hinting at.
Bob Saget narrated it?
Oh yeah, he was great. It was absolutely priceless. But he it's such a well-built setup, but that's because they were locked into an ending. They had to bring everybody back to an ending. And personally, when I saw the ending, it made sense to me. But it is so well built that like because they knew what would come up in future seasons, they started doing those things where like they would show like because he's telling a story.
Yeah.
He'd be like, there was one. So Lily ends up having a kid later in the seasons.
Okay.
Before they announced she was pregnant, he's telling a story about how Barney and Lily were fighting, and he's like, I remember him saying something, and then like there's a floating beer glass, and like one of them said something to so like part of the story is he's realizing, man, I'm not remembering this right, and they kind of come back to it, and at the end, it's like Barney has an ice cream cone, and like Lily grabs Barney and pulls him away from a car that was going to hit him, and Barney looks back and goes, "You saved us." And he's like, why would Barney say that about an ice cream cone? I don't think that's right. And then I think it's the next episode. They're like going through it. And then at the end of his episode, he goes, now I remember what happened with that. The roles were reversed. The beer was on Lily's belly. It wasn't floating. She was pregnant. And then she stepped out into the road and Barney grabbed her and saved her from the car because she was pregnant. She looked at Barney and said, "You saved us." And that was like the end of the season, showing that next season Lily's going to have a kid.
Yeah.
And it was one of those things where they were able to do cool little things like that because they already knew where the story was going.
Yeah, and you can see good examples. Breaking Bad. I'm not sure how much Vince Gilligan knew where he was taking the story, but I bet you anything he knew where it was going because it went so well. Then you have the other side of the spectrum. You have a show like Lost, which
nobody knows where anything's
very
happening
much
at all
did not
times.
know where it was going. Oh my God, did it not know? Fun show. I liked it. I remember liking it when I watched it. I think I was fine with the ending more so than others were. But oh my God, did this show meander? They set up stuff in the first season, which is what J.J. Abrams does. He plants these seeds and then lets someone else figure out.
So, I was going to say, could you say that they got lost along the way?
You absolutely could, yeah. And there were cool arcs. There's an arc where a nuke sends them back in time. That was a pretty cool arc.
Interesting.
Yeah.
We should test this theory.
Okay, I'm down.
Let's do it.
Okay. So, but yeah, it really, it's the, what movie was it recently where it was, I can't remember, but it's the big thing in writing is, okay, the very first thing you do is you come up with the general idea of your story.
Yep.
But the other first thing you do is you know how your story ends.
That's a big deal.
I want to call it George R. R. Martin here specifically. You should. I've talked about the whole thing of people who plan versus people who pants, which is fly by the seat of their pants.
Oh yeah.
And George R. R. Martin is the latter. And you can really write yourself into a hole because you get all these characters with all these all these overarching plot lines that are connected to everything. But if you can't bring that together at the end, what's the point?
Yeah, you kind of lose it.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that I don't know if you watched 24.
First handful of seasons, yeah.
So it's actually one of those things that's kind of nice, but also at the same time kind of unsatisfying, is that once characters were kind of done, you don't know what happened to them. But at the
or they
same
just
time,
come back to life.
well, yeah, there was also that with the one, but there was this one lady that was like kind of like a crucial part of the story, and then like these guys took her away, and you're kind of wondering like what happened to her. But it's kind of one of those things where it's kind of nice where it's like, oh, I don't get to follow that story.
Yeah.
I'm following this story, and this is where they interacted. So it kind of creates a more realistic world. But at the same time, like when you're watching a show, I do want to see where those go.
Well,
I
yeah.
do want to like see them to their conclusion, even if it was literally 2 seconds later they took her in the back and offed her. Like,
Yeah.
I want that conclusion.
Well, it's the whole thing of, if you're making any sort of visual medium, you need to have every single frame, every shot, every object in the shot has to have a purpose.
Yep.
And it's so if this plot line didn't lead anywhere, why was it in the show?
Chekhov. Very Chekhov.
Yeah, exactly. Chekhov's gun. If something's in there, you as the audience, you might not in your head say, "Oh, okay, there's a red phone in this shot." So that must mean that phone has significance later on.
Yep.
Your brain doesn't think it, but your brain does.
Yeah.
And so if that red phone never comes up again, that little nagging thing in your head will be like, so what was the point of that? I have a great example. Did you ever see War of the Worlds with Tom Cruise from 2005?
I'll be completely honest with you. I believe I did, but I don't remember a single thing about
That's
it.
perfectly fine because there was nothing memorable about it. The visuals were cool. The tripods look dope. There's a cool scene where he's captured in the tripod and him and all the other people in it blow it up.
Oh, cool.
It annoys me the same way every War of the Worlds adaptation does where they don't include the Thunderchild scene. I don't know if I've ever said this on the show. My grand ambition is to one day direct a period-accurate, book-accurate version of War of the Worlds. It is an incredible story, and I want to tell it right because no one else has.
Patreon, make it happen.
Yeah, dude, I'd love that so much. But there's a scene early on. It establishes his character as running one of the, you ever seen those massive cranes they use at shipping yards?
Yeah.
That pick up the big cargo containers and move them around.
Yeah, the big Connex boxes.
Exactly. It showed him operating that crane and then leaving his job and going back. So you as the viewer are sitting there like, okay, so we've established what he does for work. They must have done that for a reason. Never comes up again. Ever. What he does for a job, despite them setting it up. Instead of something like the movie 2012. Did you see that one? The disaster one?
No, that one I didn't see. That one I didn't have a desire to look at.
One of the earliest things it does is it sets up that the main character drives a limo for a job, and he's kind of a deadbeat. And it is important to the plot is that his knowledge of how to drive that thing and him owning the limo in the first place are both kind of important to the plot. Because he can fit his family in it, his extended family in it, and he can drive it around well enough to escape the destruction, which I don't care what anyone says. Roland Emmerich makes a great disaster movie.
That's cool.
2012 is a fun movie to watch. Fight me.
I'll have to go back and watch that.
So you set these things up. And so if you have something in there, if you have a setup with no payoff, then it's pointless, if not detrimental to your movie.
Yeah. Speaking of that, I think that is exactly why Rogue One is the best Star Wars movie to come out after the prequels and the original trilogy.
Okay, I agree with you. Explain. Still, I still want to hear your explanation.
So, and the reason
I like
why,
hearing about Rogue One being good.
So I think Rogue One was great because it was locked into an ending that was already preset.
Okay, yeah, I agree.
For things like Solo, there wasn't a preset lock-in. He just has to live.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Solo
so you can tell any story.
It had the check boxes. Han and Chewie have to be there and live.
Yep.
And the Millennium Falcon has to end up with the Millennium Falcon.
Yes. So and that's kind of the thing. It's like you're going to tell a story of how you got this, but the story is completely irrelevant. It can be whatever you want.
Yeah.
In Rogue One, the story had to be how these spies got the data and sent it back. So you're locked into a specific ending. They died.
Why they aren't there.
Exactly.
In episode 4.
So they're dead. They already said they're dead. You already know what's coming at the end, but it locks you into a purposeful ending.
Yeah.
So when they bring it all together at the end, and they're fighting on the end, you're hoping that maybe they got out and they didn't know. But like when they sit down there on the beach and look at each other, they're like, we did what we had to do.
Yeah.
We knew this was a potential ending.
Yeah.
And we're willing to accept
And that was
it.
so cool to me that movie had the balls to kill everyone it introduced you to.
Yes.
Like, that was awesome.
Well, and that was one of those things where it's kind of like the scene in the Hunger Games at the end of the second movie where it's all the people going to blow up the dam.
Yeah.
And they know that, like, well, it's worth the sacrifice.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm not going to make it, but it's worth it for other people to make it.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what this one was, where it was like, these people really were more, it's better that I survive. And they got to the point where they realized sometimes someone has to make the sacrifice here.
Yeah.
So it would be better that it would be me.
You know, I'm thinking about it. Other than Tarkin, Darth Vader, I don't think any other character, Mon Mothma, I believe other than those three characters, no one in Rogue One that we're introduced to in the first half of the movie survives.
Yes.
Not a single person.
Yep.
And for those who don't know, Krennic was the general. Tarkin is Grand Moff Tarkin, the guy who blows up Alderaan. And
Creepy CGI. The
Mon
only thing I didn't
Mothma
like.
was the girl who wears the white dress in Rogue One, and she's also the one who gives half of the speech in Return of the Jedi. And I believe she's there on Endor or not on Yavin.
Yep.
During the battle.
Yeah, she is.
And then Darth Vader is Darth Vader. If you don't know who he is,
I absolutely
didn't expect
loved his bit.
Yeah.
And the ending was phenomenal.
yes.
I absolutely,
oh my God.
Well, and that was a Vader being Vader moment.
Yeah.
And I loved it because it was that witty banter that like
Yep.
that don't choke on your aspirations.
Oh
and I
my
was just like,
God.
that is priceless.
That is brilliant. It's such a brilliant line, both in and out of universe.
Oh yes.
Because that's absolutely something Vader would say.
Yeah. Well, and I think that was one of the things that like I was trying to think of what it was. I think that was one of the things that I can't believe we got back to this. I think the prequels did really bad.
We landed on Star Wars again.
but this is a great like I think this is a great way of like storytelling in the disconnect. The prequels never built Vader like Anakin as a witty jokester.
Yeah.
Like that makes those kind of puns, that looks at things and kind of like says what he means, but kind of makes a joke out of it. And that's one of those things where like
I disagree.
it was-
You see it in episode 2. The dialogue between him and Obi-Wan. It's real. Some of it is Lucas's fault because it's poorly written, but you see the seeds of the sharp dialogue between them. I think immediately the elevator scene in episode 2 when they're talking about the nest of Gundarks. Is the back and forth are pretty sharp. Same with episode 3 and pretty much the whole Grievous or the whole Battle of Coruscant thing. They're constantly bantering.
Oh, which you might know this because you're into gaming. There's a game that you play. I think it's The Force Unleashed, where like he makes a deal with Vader, and he's like Vader comes back and like he looks up at me. He's like, I you said you'd stay away. And it's just one of those things where like Vader just kind of looks down and goes, I lied.
Yeah.
And like it is the greatest line where it's just like, yeah, and
Yeah.
like and like that's the kind of thing like that presence of Vader
Yeah.
was so good, and Rogue One really did justice to like that presence of Vader.
Yeah.
And like they brought him into the new world, like the newer CGI better, because it was one of those things where like when he goes to fight for to try and get the plans back, I mean he goes at it.
Oh yeah.
And it's one of those things where you're like, I wish that the original story had this kind of CGI, because like it would be amazing to have a literal carbon copy, but have the fights that they've been having.
Yeah.
Like the new
There's
lightsaber battles.
There's this
and
video you
whatnot.
should look up. It's a reimagining, recut version of Obi-Wan and Vader's fight from episode 4.
Oh, I've seen it. I've
Yeah,
seen it.
it's
so
incredible.
good.
Yeah, it's so well done. There, some of the effects are a little weird. The deep faking they did of Alec Guinness's face doesn't hold up too well.
Yeah.
But otherwise, the fight is so cool.
Dude, well, and I think that was one of those things that somebody made a critique on this with the newest trilogy. The lightsaber battles were terrible.
I disagree. Some of as long as you don't look too closely at them, the Force fight at the end of Force Awakens is pretty good. I think it does showcase the different styles they have.
Oh yeah,
And if you start analyzing the fight, it falls apart. But the throne room fight is really cool in Last Jedi. I was
Yes, it
grinning
was a
like
nice
an
scene.
idiot when I watched that. scene.
Well, it's one of those things where like they have some weird things where like one guy kind of falls over when there's no force things going on, but like that's the worst argument for it. Well, that's that's the best critique of it. The best parts of it was that they had really long shots where there was choreography through the whole thing.
Yeah.
And not a lot of people do that anymore. They do real quick cuts.
Exactly.
And like having those real long shots was really, really nice. But I think what was cool is what I would have liked to see is watch Rey get more competent with a lightsaber, because in the forest it was kind of cool because like she's clunky, she doesn't know how she wants to do it. Like they were setting her up to have a double-sided sword or a double-sided saber.
Yeah.
And what ended up happening was like when Finn tried to fight him, it was very clearly Kylo toying with him, and he's like, "Hey, yeah, sure, you're not going to beat me. I'm going to get you." But when you get to the final one with the Rise of Skywalker, their fight on the ship is terrible. It's like Rey never got better, and Kylo should have just been like, pick up / done.
Yeah.
And it was like, why didn't you build up that competency?
I'd argue that there is a failing of all of Star Wars is that why are they not using the Force more in the fights? And sure, you get the arguments that they're constantly using the Force to play mind games and like countering pushes and pulls and lifts and stuff like that. But show us that.
Yes.
Like it happened in episode 3 when Anakin and Obi-Wan went to both do a Force push, and you have that shot of their hands really close together and then them getting blasted apart.
Yep.
Show us more of that, of the Force being used in fights.
See, I was actually really, really hoping that they would end up in a position, because they kind of showed, I think it was part of the trailer, when Rey goes to swing at Kylo and Kylo just stops the blade and stops her from being able to swing at him.
Yeah.
I was actually really hoping that they were going to make both of them competent enough in the Force that neither one of them could actually fight each other.
Yeah.
Like, neither one of them would be able to get close enough to each other to where it would be forced for them to turn off their sabers and talk.
Yeah.
And it would be a really cool scene where it would be like, okay, neither one of us can win. Like, neither one of us can beat each other. What do we do?
Yeah.
Like I can't kill you and you can't kill me, so now what?
Well,
and that would have been such a cool tension, because now you can't get rid of your enemy.
You know what would be cool too is then that lets you tie into what they kind of played with, was that Force dyad that they had, where for some reason Snoke connected them through the Force.
Yeah.
Which was literally only detrimental for him.
Yeah.
But whatever, he did it. Is make that part of it. Is it almost gives them a little bit of a clairvoyance about what the other's going to do.
Yeah.
Which means that on top of having such a use of the Force that they can just stop the lightsaber, they already know what moves each other are going to make. And so they can't win because they both know how to fight against each other.
Yeah, see, that would have been a really cool thing. And then you could have a darker, more powerful Sith in the background. And then it could have been one of those things where it's like, man, it's a good thing that both of us were competent, because if we would have killed each other, we wouldn't have been able to finish off the final.
But it shouldn't have been Palpatine.
No, it shouldn't have been. But I think I sent you the meme. There was a really, really funny meme that came around where it was like, if you pay attention closely enough in the Star Wars dialogue in the beginning, where Poe says, somehow Palpatine returned, it shows it was such a lack of description and thought and in what could have happened that you could really see that it was an homage to the writers and how they got here. I was just like,
oh my God,
like, oh man. Cause like, it went through like this whole list of like how important, like the way it was dropped. And it was like, it's a reference to how poorly it was written. And then I was just like, oh, that's so funny.
Like, and it's my frustration too with like, and it's everything is, you know, the Marvel movies have fallen into it and the Star Wars ones did too, is why does it all have to be a galaxy ending threat?
Yeah, I think you were talking about this last week too.
Probably. I think we were, in Star Wars, is why couldn't it have been the story of a Sith Lord who, sure, he wasn't as threatening to the entire galaxy as Palpatine, but he was a direct threat to the Skywalker family and those close to them.
Yeah.
Is that all he was worried about was killing them. And so now you have, you know, Rey and Kylo are powerful but unfocused, and the movies are about them focusing their power to fight each other and then joining together at the end to fight this Sith that they couldn't fight on their own.
Yeah.
And, you know, the guy's not a Palpatine level manipulating the entire galaxy, but he's a threat to them.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think one of the things that like the original did really well with is that if Luke failed, it wasn't going to be necessarily mass death.
Mm-hmm.
It was going to be a devolving into tyranny.
Yeah.
So even though it was, the implication was, if I lose, the galaxy falls into tyranny. With this last one, I think you're completely correct, where it's like, if I lose, they literally just start blowing things up.
Yeah.
And I think that's
The
kind of
entire universe gets blown up.
yeah, and I think
Okay.
this was something with like the Marvel universe where they made a point to say why Thanos is such a good villain is because he's not just an outright sadist. Like, he's not like, hey,
Yeah.
I just want to murder people and I'm a bad guy. It was, I honestly believe this is the best thing for the world. And like, that's kind of the thing with like Vader in the Sith, where they're like, listen, control is better.
Mhm.
If we have control, people live better.
Yeah.
And it's an argument. It's not just power.
Yeah.
And that's what makes it really cool.
But you can make the you could easily make the argument too. So we're going to talk about New Hope. Is yeah, sure. The Empire and the Death Star were existential threats to the galaxy, but they weren't. Their plan was never to blow up the whole galaxy.
Yep.
They blew up Alderaan because they knew it was a hotbed of rebel intelligence, and the Alderaan really was throwing their weight behind the rebels.
Yeah, and it
they
shows
knew
their
it.
willingness to drop someone that goes against them.
Yeah, and it had the added bonus of almost breaking Leia, which was just icing on the cake. Is Alderaan was a threat to the Empire. But in the climax of the movie, the threat isn't that, the Death Star is going to blow up the galactic core and destroy the entire galaxy. The threat was the Death Star is going to blow up Yavin and stop the Rebel Alliance and kill Luke's friends. That was the threat. Like, to the larger galaxy on Coruscant or on Tatooine, no one cared. It would never even made a blip in their lives. But to Luke and his friends, it was everything. And that's what makes it powerful. And that's what makes it actually have tension, is that, you care because they care.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's this really interesting thing where, like, it really was a battle of ideas. Like, is the messiness of freedom worth it, or should we fall into controlled tyranny?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and that's one of those things where, like, you really start to get into it, and like, if they lose, they die. But but like you said, they're not going to blow up the universe doing it.
No.
Like, but it is one of those things where it's like, okay, our way of life survives or their way of life survives. And they've forced our hand because they won't let our way of life survive.
Yeah.
And then that's one of those things where you can really start to pull the moral differences between the two. One is saying, let me be free, and like, I get that it's not as clean, but freedom is worth it. And the other is saying, you shouldn't have any freedom. We're going to control you, and you can't go anywhere else. We're going to force you to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, now I have no other option. I have to fight you. And then you do run into this. It is idea versus idea, group versus group, not group versus world.
Yeah.
Well, and, universe in this case. But
and what's funny is if you really look into it, the Empire is obviously fascism is wrong, but
oh, this will be a hot take. That's the first thing I can.
You
think
never
of.
get anything fun by saying fascism is wrong, but they made it explicitly clear in New Hope that the Empire wasn't looking to directly control all these systems. Tarkin himself says that the governors will keep the other systems in line.
Yep.
But so they're not looking for total control. They're just looking for fealty almost.
Yep.
The Empire is largely unconcerned with how each system handles their business.
Yep.
They let the local governor handle it. And so, of course, every time they show those governors, they're jackbooted thugs who rah Empire.
Yeah.
But I bet you anything, the vast majority of those systems didn't really notice a change of management. They might have had a Star Destroyer come in once in a while to their system and make sure there's no pirates or attacks or anything like that. But otherwise, life went on.
Well, I think that was the nice thing about The Mandalorian, because like I think it's the Bill Burr's character was kind of like, and it was really interesting because Bill Burr got it because he watched it happen firsthand. He goes, they really don't care about you. They only care about power.
Yeah.
But at the same time, none of this bad stuff was happening when they were there. He's like, and like you could tell that like his character really was struggling with, you're willing to sacrifice literally anyone, not yourself, but someone else. And that's wrong. But also, these people are living better lives under you. So how do we, where do we go? Like, what do we do?
It's the classic dilemma of, under the Empire, there wasn't as much freedom, but there was also not as much crime.
Yeah.
And so it's the question of, do you trade liberty for safety? And it's a valid question. And you can make because you have the blanket statement of, fascism is bad, which is true. Fascism is bad.
Yes.
And totalitarianism is bad. Totalitarianism is bad. But there are arguments for more government and less government. But total government or total lack of government are both bad because they're the extreme options.
Yeah.
But anywhere in the middle, you can make arguments for it.
Yeah, well, and I think that's one of those things where, like, I don't know if you ever watched a TV show called Designated Survivor.
I've heard of it.
Okay. I love Designated Survivor. Not season 3. Season 3 didn't happen.
Okay.
I'll explain that in a second. But season 1 and 2 are great. Because the idea is, for those of you that don't pay attention to government like I do, the Designated Survivor is during the State of the Union address, there is one person that is set aside that if something were to happen and all of government is destroyed, well, all the members of the government are destroyed, you are now the new president. You are now the new leader. So if something tragic happens, we have a leader to look to. I do believe it's picked at random in the whole 9 yards.
Okay.
So
from who? From
I believe it's from the cabinet.
Okay.
So in this case, it's the home. Oh God, I forgot the name of it. Home and Infrastructure cabinet member. I can't think of who it is. But anyway, it's Kiefer Sutherland, and he gets picked as the designated survivor. And while he's sitting back, the news feed goes out in the whole 9 yards, and you just hear this like boom, like loud shattering. And he goes over the window, opens it up, and the Capitol is like gone. Like you could just see the smoke cloud. Now it's not a nuke, but it was enough ordnance to like make your mushroom cloud in the whole 9 yards.
Yeah.
So and immediately the Secret Service come over and go, "You need to get away from that window right now. We're taking you." So they end up taking him to the White House into the the you get to see like the secret space,
the
bunker. I was trying to think what it was, and they're like, "We're swearing you in right now," and his wife's just kind of like, "Holy crap, my husband's the guy now," and he's like, "Holy crap, I'm the guy now." Like, and it's him trying to deal with this. Yeah. So like the first couple episodes are, we were just attacked. What do we do? People are trying to take over. It ends up being one of those like domestic threats kind of thing, but they do it artfully. But the whole rest of the season is, how do we deal with the issues of today? Because like a new Congress gets put in, and the idea was he's an independent and he got people through that that tragedy. And he comes out and he says, okay, the job now is to have a Senate. And after the Senate, we're going to appoint new justices and we're going to start, working on laws again. And like, we need to have elections in the whole 9 yards. So of course, everything goes wrong along the way.
Well, obviously, or it's not good TV.
But what ends up happening is after the Senate's put in place and then the House is now voted on again, so they do special elections, it ends up being like nobody has a majority. So it ends up being like a third independent, a third Republican, a third Democrat. So the first 2 seasons is, how do we argue with each other? So I think one of the coolest ones that they did was they did statues. Like, do we take them down? Do we not? And they hit every single aspect of the statues. And they gave everybody the best arguments possible.
Yeah.
And in the end, they make a decision. And it's like, oh, cool. I got to watch a general political debate. I didn't get to watch a specific political debate. I got to watch a general political debate.
Okay.
That made it so much better because I didn't hear... And those of you that pay attention, you might pick up on some of the things that they're saying. But for the most part, it was generalized enough for me to be like, I'm enjoying this thing. I'm enjoying government. I'm watching people make decisions. Like, I'm watching people try to do their best and not being able to get exactly what they want.
Yeah.
But doing their best with what they're given. And I'm like, this is a great series. Season 3, don't watch it. So
wait, you said at the beginning that we'll come back to season 3. And when we came back to season 3, the entirety of your statement on it was, don't watch it. So, I just want to clear that up. I'm not asking for clarification.
Just ignore it. Pretend it never existed.
Okay.
So it got canceled.
All 2 seasons of Designated Survivor.
Watch all 2. You're saying. So yeah, it's on Netflix. So what happened was after season 2, it got canceled. They had built some wonderful characters, and the press secretary is the only one that stays the same. Netflix wanted to prove that they could build a better story.
Oh, God.
They got rid of all of the good characters. They got rid of characters that didn't make sense. So there's one character who he's like an advisor, and he's kind of like this outcast. And like somebody, at some point in the series, they ask him like, why does he not have a bigger name? Like, why do people not go for him? And they're like, well, when he was being an advisor for another campaign, somebody lied about them outright and like really, really smeared them. He told the guy he'd stay with him to the end. And because he stayed with him to the end and they failed, everyone looked at him as a failure. They wouldn't pick him.
Yeah.
So they built him as this guy that would stay to the end. Season 3, the guy's running for president because technically, well, he's now allowed to run for president. So he was trying to debate, do I step down? Because look, I got us through. I did my job. Do I want to continue?
Yeah.
So at the beginning of season 3, he takes over, but that's also when Netflix took over. So they got rid of that character. And the excuse was everyone's seeing this fall apart. So they're jumping ship.
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, you can't build a character like that and then chuck him. And then like his brother, it was a big deal with his brother. Like his brother used to be like a runner effectively. Anytime something hard happened, he would run. So his brother came back and was like, I'm here to help you. And his brother ended up being a really cool character.
Yeah.
Like for like the second season. And then they could have made a good argument where it said, hey, look, I took the kids and I went somewhere else. And like, I'm taking care of the kids. That's my responsibility to you. They have no clue where the brother went. They never address it.
Yeah.
They don't say where he is or why he is. And then they decided, and then of course it's Netflix. So they decided that if you're diverse, you have a great character development.
Being black is a character trait, according to Netflix.
It was. And it was one of those things where like some of their characters were phenomenal. And probably the worst part, and like this is just a personal thing on my end. They had a character that was HIV positive, didn't tell his partner. Ugh. And then the entire arc of it, at the end, his partner apologizes to him for the stigma of him having HIV and him not wanting to sleep with him. It didn't have anything to do with the fact that the guy has a fatal disease and didn't tell you that's transmissible.
Yeah.
It was that he couldn't accept him for who he was. And I was like, am I supposed to care about this character? I'm like, that guy's garbage.
Yeah.
And like, it was this really
it's the
weird
problem of like you make these characters or you give them character traits or lack thereof.
Yes.
You say, okay, we need diversity here. Let's add this guy. He's black. Character done. Wait, hold on. Why should I care about him?
Yeah.
Like, it's not to say that like, how to word it? Like, just because someone is something doesn't just automatically make them a character.
Yes.
You need to give them depth. Is like, okay, if this character's black, make that significant somehow. Make it that, his rise to this position or his struggles are related to that.
Yeah.
Don't necessarily mash it over the head of like, I got to this position despite being black. It's like, no, just show the struggles he went through and what he learned from them.
And that
develop
was
the character that way.
100%. And that was the thing where in the first 2 seasons, they did a really good job with that. Like the one advisor that he has.
And actually, I feel like I should clarify this more before we go on. Is that I'm not saying that there's not a reason for him to be black, just make him white. I'm just saying that him being black should not be the be all end all of his character. Is that you should still develop a character. It's like I'm trying to think of good examples of it. But
so I actually think that this is one of the things that they did in the other one. They did a really good job of every character had a different thing. And every once in a while, what they would do is they would have a character that originally, the way it was set up, they would have a character that was of a demographic that, so like if you get into government a little bit, you'll start to realize that like usually when you say mainstream opinions, that means like 60% or more.
Yeah.
Like it's very, very rare that you actually get majority opinions. And I mean like 51% in government. Like it's very, very rare. And on any given subject, more people disagree with you than agree with you. Like even big topics, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
But anyway, one of the things that they did really cool with these characters is they would throw balls like that, where it's like, okay, even though the majority of people in this demographic think this way, this character isn't, and we're going to give him a good reason to think this way. And it was the best argument possible for every single one of them.
Yeah.
So, and that's what I liked about the series. It was general politics. I'm not telling you what is right. I'm trying to give you the best argument for this side and the best argument for that side.
Yeah.
And that's what went really, really well. In the 3rd season, that all went out the window. So his vice president actually steps down to run on the Democratic side, and then you never see her again. And the reason why, and I pointed this out to my girlfriend, I thought it was hilarious. It was his previous cabinet member is running for the Republicans, his vice president is running for the Democrats, and he's running as an independent. In the final debate, which was supposed to be the big debate, it's supposed to be all 3 of them.
Yeah.
They only show 2. And the reason why is the positions they take and they call independent are indistinguishable from one side.
Yeah.
So you can only have 2 because there's no difference between the other 2 candidates. They just ruined the series because it no longer became about general politics. It became about specific.
Yeah.
Right? And it was really interesting. Like, one of the subjects they got into, which this is really weird. They got on child brides. Right?
Yeah.
Not a thing that's a big issue in this country. But they made a whole episode about child brides and the significance of 18 being 18. But which is weird is that if you actually wanted to build like a thing to talk about that, different states have different ages of consent. Some states are 16, some are 18, some are 17.
Mm-hmm.
Some you can't get married until you're 18, some you can get married with parental consent.
Yeah.
They never went into it. They never got into the subject. It was the entire time all you could hear was, if you're not 18, you can't get married. There was no, hey, listen, like if you're 16 and you know this is what you want, go for it. Like, now, I'm not saying that's my opinion, but what I'm saying is there was a conversation behind it.
Yeah.
The entire third, it destroyed all characters.
And those are so
all
frustrating.
characters.
You keep talking about this. I keep thinking of Dexter,
Mm-hmm.
which just the last 2 or 3 seasons were just absolute character assassinations on everyone in the show.
Yep.
Like, stop at the 3rd season. Do yourself a favor.
I love it.
So I was looking this up because I wanted to find an example, and I found an article on the ManhattanInstitute.org, and the title of the article is "Black Isn't a Personality Type," and they bring up a great point because I don't know. This is something that bugs me a lot in pop culture. Is this idea of lazy writers who check the boxes and say that, world-ending threat. There's our drama taken care of.
Yeah.
Diversity. Here's our black character. His personality is black. Here's our Asian character. His personality is Asian. Here's our gay character. His personality is gay. Make sure he dies first, by the way. And it's seriously, kill your gays as a trope.
So is it kind of like in the horror movies where the black guy goes first? It's in now
If you
regular
have a gay character, you got to kill them off.
In dramas, it's now gay guy goes first.
They bring up a
That's
great
interesting. I'm
example.
gonna have to start paying attention to that.
Franklin from the Peanuts comics. He was a black character that Charles Schultz introduced in 1968. What was his personality? Charlie Brown. What was he? If you had to describe him in a word.
Charlie Brown was a depressed guy trying to do his best, feeling like he wasn't good enough.
He was a loser. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you had to describe Lucy in one word, what was it?
Neurotic.
Oh, I'll accept it. Bossy.
Yeah. Well, yeah, kind of. Yeah.
Snoopy was insane, but Franklin, his character was black.
I thought
there was nothing defining about him.
If I remember correctly, I thought Franklin was the one that would always counsel Charlie Brown at the end, where he would look at Charlie Brown and be like, "Hey, Charlie Brown, you're not perfect, and that's okay."
No, wasn't that usually Linus?
Or was that somebody else?
I think it was Linus.
That was
usually.
Linus. See, I didn't watch the Peanuts growing up.
Yeah, this is in the comic era.
But
even in the shows that they had, it was just in one of the TV specials, they had him giving Charlie Brown 5 once. So I assume a high 5.
Giving him the
he had
5
no personality
once.
traits at all, which sounds about right, especially because that's where you get the term token black, which South Park makes fun of by literally naming their black character Token. But
that's so funny.
To use an example of something we've already been talking about, Rogue One.
Yeah.
Forrest Whitaker's character. His personality trait isn't that he's black. His personality trait is that he is an insane extremist.
Yes.
Like, that's his character.
Yep.
He also happens to be portrayed by a black actor. That's
which, by
how
the way,
introduce
is
diversity.
phenomenal. I love him as an actor.
Yeah.
I can never remember his name, but I love him as an
Forrest
actor.
Whitaker. Yeah,
Forrest
he's fun. My problem is I get him and because they tend to do similar movies, him and Lawrence Fishburne mixed up.
I'd have to see both of them. Because I know
they're
Lawrence
just,
Whitaker.
they're very different looking.
Okay.
But for some reason, their movies just tend to overlap in my head. And
Oh,
then,
so
and then
they play
Denzel Washington
similar
sneaks
styles.
in there sometimes.
Denzel Washington.
Because like I think of Forrest Whitaker, the first movie that came to my head was Book of Eli, but that's Denzel Washington.
No, yeah, that's Denzel Washington.
Yeah,
I liked Book of Eli. I think it was just kind of weird.
it didn't make sense. Some of it.
It did and it didn't. But yeah, but that was one of those things where like, I think that's a really, really important distinction there that you make is that, oddly enough, and this is kind of a thing that I think you'd agree with me, writers have backed their way into racism.
Yeah. They have.
Like it's one of those things where like if the pendulum swings, what you've done is now you've looked at someone and said you're just like the rest of your group.
Mm-hmm.
So if I make a character, then you should expect these traits.
Yep.
And like it's just one of those things. Like to me, I personally find it offensive. Like, and now again, I'm one of those guys where if I'm offended, whoop-de-doo, it's me who cares about my opinion.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is one of those things where like you back into racism. So it's like, I want to make a diverse cast. Awesome. Make cool characters and make them diverse versus making them, instead of making them a thing and you should know based on the stereotype. Because like, I'm fine if you use stereotypes to like as a springboard because it's easier to tell stories that way.
Yeah.
The problem is that I don't connect with a character that doesn't show anything throughout time.
Exactly. Like give them growth. Is use their what they look like, or heck, you see it a lot with where the term typecasting comes from.
Yes.
You cast an actor because people think of them as a certain type of character.
Yep.
It can be as simple as comedy. You don't expect a drama out of Seth Rogen.
No, you don't.
You don't expect a humorous movie from Denzel Washington. You expect an action movie from him. So use that as your springboard. Is you have Denzel Washington in your action movie, but then he has character growth.
It's like Russell Crowe.
I
think I mentioned that before.
Literally last week, yes. And it's the same as last week again. I don't think we have any specific place we're trying to go right now with this discussion, but it's just something interesting about the movie industry. Is you see the shorthand is okay because he's black. That must mean he is he's faced oppression and he has struggled in life where his white peers didn't. And it's like, and so you can make that shorthand. Is if you want to show someone who's that, you just make them black. And it's like that's kind of lazy and borderline offensive.
Yeah. And that's one of those cool things where it's like, if you want to use,
or making your smart character Asian, is you're using that as shorthand for, this is the smart guy.
Yeah.
Why?
Well, and I think
because of the stereotype that's racist. So doesn't that make you racist for doing it that way?
Yeah. So like, I have an interesting nuanced opinion on this, and there shouldn't be anything offensive in it, so it shouldn't be a problem. I'm fine with using group statistics to kind of say like, okay, this person is in the majority of this group, that's the background. But then you need to show me why that character is an individual. Yeah. Like I'm totally fine with using like the quote unquote stereotypes as a springboard to I can't get into every detail of my character.
Yeah.
But
or if the
let me show you
the point.
Yes.
If you're trying to make a point about these stereotypes.
Yeah, and that's a different
But
type.
that requires intelligent writing.
Yes, and that still requires an individual at the end of the day.
Yes, and that's what it comes down to. Is we're not asking. It's across the board. People aren't asking for you to check the boxes and say, okay, we've got our black, we've got our Asian, we've got our gay. They're asking you to create characters.
Yes,
and the character, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what they look like. They, as long as they are a character.
Yeah,
like, and because you'll see it, you'll see people talk about how they'll watch movies, and if they don't see someone who looks exactly like them, they can't identify with it. It's like, I've never had that problem. Do you or I have trouble watching Black Panther because the white guy in it is not in it very long? Of course we don't.
No. Well, I do think it's interesting. It's one of those things where like,
and that's that's a dangerous pitfall too, because you could then construe that as me saying that how to phrase it. You could construe that as me saying, so don't hire black actors or don't hire Asian actors. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that checking the box doesn't make them a good character and doesn't make you a good writer.
Yeah, definitely. And I think kind of what happens, and this is one of those things where this is the kind of things that I'm interested in, that I like look into. I find it interesting that happens, but that's also one of those things where like I know that it's a thing that people do. Like if I don't look like them, then I can't be like them.
Yeah.
But that's, I think, one of the things that's so important about storytelling in movies and things is like, especially like with Captain America. Like Captain America is my favorite like comic book and movie setup.
Why? Because he's white?
Very clearly. the only reason, let me tell you.
Of course.
But but no, and the reason being is that it is about the morals. It is about who you are as an individual. And like that's what he always pushes forward.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of those things that's really important to tell in stories is like it doesn't matter what you look like. It matters who you are. What you look like is what you are. Who you are is your actions.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that like I think Captain America's stories tell, especially like if you take I think it's Winter Soldier.
Mm-hmm.
He's willing to go after his own guys because his own guys are no longer of good character.
Yeah.
When they were doing the good things, well, and this is one of those things like where he was duped, but when they were doing the moral thing, he fought alongside them. But whenever they stopped being moral, he fought them. And that was what was really, really cool that I really enjoyed about that movie. And that movie broke records when it came out.
Oh, yeah.
And and it was like right at a time where I think there was a lot of tension. And I think that's kind of what people were looking for. It's like, I'm looking for a moral ideal.
Yeah.
I'm not looking for a character ideal. I'm not looking for a demographic ideal. I'm looking for a moral ideal because morals are irrelevant to demographics.
Yeah.
Like what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong. Like, so give me someone that is morally good. And you can put anybody in that moral position.
Most of the Marvel movies are like that.
Yes.
You have Captain America, obviously. He's the pillar of virtue. But then you also have characters like Black Panther, King T'Challa. You have, name them, any of them, Paul Rudd and Ant-Man. You have, I don't know why I'm bothering naming them. It is all of them.
Yeah.
They are all pillars of virtue.
Yes.
Except for the villains, obviously.
Yeah.
Because Infinity War is Thanos' movie, changed my mind.
I can't.
Okay.
Because you're right.
So no matter who you are or what you look like, you can find someone if you need that who looks like you.
Yeah. And those are the stories that like I wish that they would tell. And I'll be honest with you, when this is gonna sound weird. I normally don't care about the demographics of my heroes. I was actually kind of surprised when they made Green Lantern Ryan Reynolds when that movie came out.
Yeah.
Because I grew up with the cartoon version, which was the black guy.
Oh.
And that black guy's character was phenomenal.
Yeah.
I loved his character. He was serious. He was stoic. He was like, hey, man, here I am.
Yeah.
I'm here to do what's right. And let's go. And I loved it. And then when it was Ryan Reynolds, I was like, Ryan Reynolds is a comedian.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's not going to have that stoic, like, I will do what it takes and I will drive with my will where I wanted to go.
Yeah.
Now, it's my understanding that the original character was white, but
Who cares?
I still loved that
It's the
character.
Hermione thing all over again. Everyone got all upset that they made Hermione black in this in the stage show, Harry Potter and the Cursed Child, I think.
Oh, yeah.
And the show has piss poor writing, but still. Why did everyone get all upset about it? Who cares? She's a fictional character. And she already
100%.
she's a character.
Already had my
Who
thing.
cares what she looks like?
Well, and
it doesn't matter.
And that was kind of going to be my second part about the Green Lantern movie is I wouldn't have cared about the demographic if it wasn't you went from this stoic man who is willing to make the sacrifices and willing to drive through any adversity to a comedian.
Yeah.
And my critique was the comedian end of it. Like, Green Lantern wasn't supposed to be a comedian.
Yeah.
He was supposed to be a serious guy who was willing to go through literally anything. Even if that meant dying, he would still go through it because his will is supposed to be stronger than anyone else's.
Exactly.
And I was like, I want that character. I don't want Ryan Reynolds.
Yeah.
And like, I think even Ryan Reynolds didn't want that. didn't want
He
that
kind
role.
of he kind of disavowed that in Deadpool.
Which, by the way,
one
was
or two, I forget.
priceless too. Because
Yeah.
he gets the time machine and he goes back and he's like, you're welcome.
Oh yeah, that's right.
He goes back and kills himself and he's like, you're welcome.
Yeah, while he's reading the script. That's right.
So funny.
We are running really high on time here, but it was a fun discussion.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Same as I always, whenever we don't have show notes, I always worry that we're not going to find a topic. We're good at finding topics. I'll say it now. We're good at it.
We get in there.
We do. Even though the first 20 minutes of the show were not pop culture at all, but
Hey, you guys get to know us a little bit better. And it's about connections.
And yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. And if they want to connect with you, Zach, how could they do it?
Well, you know, you can get me at Twitter. It's at Little Leaf, Lief, and make sure there's a score between little and leaf, underscore. Because I am not a middle-aged Brazilian woman.
He is not. If you want to find Ryan, who will be joining us again next week, You can find him at Riki Tiki. It's not a bunch of Riki Tikis over and over again. I just forgot the numbers that come after his name.
So he would be at Riki Tiki.
I'm looking. Hang on.
Oh man, I thought that would be the perfect timing.
I have to, Riki Tiki 252 on Twitter, Twitch, and other places. If you want to find me, Matt Ross VO on Twitter, Jan Jinkle on Twitch, and the show, which please tell your friends about it because word of mouth is huge for a show like this. Huge. You can also find it Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pop Culture Unbox. We never post anything, but we're trying to get better about it. You know, trying-ish. Thank you all for listening.
Have fun.
I love you.